From Tally to Cali.
It's time
to wake up.
Wake up!
Warchant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
And this is Wake Up Warchant, presented by
Vitamin Energy.
The vitamins.
The energy.
Now here's Warchant.com's Aslan Hajavandi
and Corey Clark.
Wake up! It's Wake Up Warchant presented by Vitamin Energy. Coming up on today's show, On3 business reporter Pete Nakos gives us the latest on the Florida State coordinator search and some observations from Tuesday's practice and what if the worst thing possible happens on Saturday. It's Wake Up Warchant. It's presented by Vitamin Energy. VitaminEnergy.com. Promo code warchantbogo. Warchant, B-O-G-O. Buy one, get one free. Like the Workout Plus? Buy that, get one free. You like the mood? Buy one of those, get one free. Do you like the focus? Buy one of those, get one free. Any variety, any flavor, variety pack. You don't know which one you exactly like. Buy that, get one for free. VitaminEnergy.com. Clinically proven, clinically tested. One of the rising items in Convenience Store Magazine 2024. One of the top 5 items, everybody. If you got a convenience store out there, it says you need to have Vitamin Energy. But go to the website, because at the convenience store, Corey, there's no BOGO. No BOGO at the register, only on the website, vitaminenergy.com. Our website, warchant.com, the 150 deal still going strong, or scrong, some might say. $1 1 week, and then 50% off an annual membership. Man, I don't know, what would have 19-year-old Corey Clark's reaction been? What? 26-year-old Corey Clark's reaction been if that would have been gifted to him for Christmas? For me, 19-year-old Aslan would have been over the moon, Corey Clark.
Yeah, the only way I can compare it is like the Osceola back in the day when I was a kid and how much I loved that. But look, man, I'll be honest with you. Warchant's better than the Osceola was. Yep. A lot better. Not impugning the work of the people that wrote for the Osceola back in the day, but there were no message boards inside the paper and no videos to watch in breaking down press conferences and stuff. So I'm just telling you, Warchant's, you can't what else? If you're listening to this show, you're obviously very invested in Florida State football. They're 1-9, about to play Charleston Southern. So, again, don't be a fan later. Don't hop on later because, trust me, rates going back up once they get good again. So take advantage now when they're struggling because they will be good again soon enough.
Apologies to the Midnight Crew. Forgot to schedule the podcast yesterday to publish at its normal midnight time on YouTube. Still published on the podcast feed, but I know we got a lot of YouTube folks out there, so sorry for dropping it at 7:45 in the morning when I woke up and realized, oh no, forgot to do that. Won't happen again, everybody. Sorry, did some up-downs. Did about 10 up-downs. Saw somebody have to do up-downs. Saw a walk-on do a pick 6, Corey, and everybody came to celebrate with him out during practice on Tuesday. Even Randy Shannon jogged over to give him a smack on the helmet. Mike Norvell was happy with his play, but the guy, for whatever reason, dropped down and started doing like 10 push-ups. Not up-downs, but was doing push-ups because he broke some sort of rule. I don't know exactly what, but I don't even think Mike was that upset about it. But Randy was like, all right, man, get up now. Good job. Keep it moving. So
okay.
I did my up-downs. A little bit worried about you, man. I haven't heard you talk about, you haven't mentioned working out when we've scheduled a recording until yesterday. So was yesterday the first time you've worked out in a while? Have you been missing days? What's going on over there?
Aslan? I guess you haven't seen me shirtless in a while. Because, no, Daddy doesn't miss days. Okay. Daddy don't skip. No, it was I had in all transparency, I had an Orange Theory class. I couldn't do it at noon because I wouldn't have been back in time for Seminole headlines. So I had to go to 4:30. So I was blocking out that period of time. I had to go run. I hadn't run in a few days, so I did have to go hit the treadmill.
All right.
I did 3 miles in like 25 minutes. So,
jeez,
buddy,
dude, that's awesome, dude.
For my age,
for anybody,
for
man.
a flipping beast, I want to start doing those masters, like masters track and field events.
Okay.
I want to be Can I be a heptathlete?
Why can't you? I'll chronicle it all. We got an off season coming up here.
I've never done any of that. Can you imagine the first time you try to do a pole vault?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I would impale myself. I would go backwards. I definitely would go backwards. If I could even get airborne. But I probably don't even get airborne. I just jam my shoulder trying to get that thing into the little, whatever that nook or cranny is, you have to put it in to flip up.
Shout out to our guy, Williams Wrestling. Apparently that's what he goes by on YouTube. He was at the gym, Corey, and was pointing at me. Large individual. very large individual, muscular individual.
Right.
And was just wagging his finger at me, pointing at me. I'm like, no, I'm not using this device. And he kept wagging his finger at me. I turned around. I'm like, you looking at me? He's like, yeah. He's like, you got it from Warchant, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, cool. And he just pounded me up. Didn't say whether or not he liked me.
It's fine.
So I promptly left.
Okay.
Because I was like, well, I mean, if he doesn't like me, I don't want to be sitting around here.
I think
Run
it's
away from your
implied-
problems, kids. Run away from your problems if there's a problem on the horizon.
I think it's implied if he dapped you up. Like, if he didn't like you, I don't think he acknowledges you at all.
That's true.
Maybe. That's what I would think. I think he dapped you up. He was looking maybe for a convo, but he didn't want to overstep his bounds.
I do wonder that. Like, I'll see people out in the wild whenever I leave my house, and they'll kind of look at me funny, and I don't know if that's just their default kind of appearance, or they kind of notice who I am and like, oh, I don't like you. Except I beg you, if you don't like me, tell me you don't like me.
Well, that would be weird.
We'll have a fun
Why would you want to
conversation.
know that?
Well, I just want to, hey, why? Let's elaborate on your position. Elaborate on your position, sir or ma'am.
All right.
But I digress. Anyhow, so I was a practice on Tuesday, Corey. You missed a good one. You missed a good one.
Good.
I don't know. I mean, they did a little bit of different things in the individual periods. Like the last few weeks, they'd been going. Tackles were working with Alex Atkins. Guards and centers were working with Gabe Fertitta, and then they would kind of maybe link up later on in the day and actually do 5-men schemes, if you will, 5-men drill, 5-player drills. But in the individual periods, they were cohesive the whole time. It was all offensive linemen. Every drill they ran was 5 offensive linemen taking on defensive linemen, working on their drops and steps and hand placement, all that kind of stuff together. So that was a little bit different. And then in the first period following period 3, which would be period 4, everybody, defensively, they've just been doing, I mean, they either are yelled, they're on the sideline, Fuller would yell at them to run and take the field, and then they would drop.
Who would?
Fuller, previously.
Oh, you're talking about previous practices.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, so, they'd be on the sideline, he would yell something, 11 guys would run onto the field, and then he would, point in a certain direction. They would have to run to that part of the field, just kind of, everybody swarm to the ball. There was ones where they would start on, 5-6 guys start on their chest. He blows a whistle. You got to pop up and then run to a certain spot on the field. I guess, maximizing effort. Randy had them running it. It was like a multi-level drill. You would be in your stance. You'd have to get out of it, run. You'd engage with one guy who'd be holding a pad. So you'd thud up with him, and then you'd peel off, and you'd go and run and hit a tackling dummy, or like an individual sled, like a one-person sled. Yeah, so it was a little bit more aggressive, I guess, a little bit more physical. But speaking with Randy Shannon after practice, Corey, physicality always a part of the mix when you're a defensive coordinator, but it sounds like there's one other attribute that he's emphasizing or has been told to emphasize as he now sheds the co-coordinator and is the defensive coordinator for Florida State.
Yeah, what was it? To play fast?
Yeah, you wrote about it, buddy. You wrote about it.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't know if you were setting me up or you were going to keep talking. And I had no problem with you keeping
that
talking.
was enough.
I wouldn't say that.
Enough as on.
Yeah, he did say that, by the way, this is the 4th school he's been the defensive coordinator at. Second time he's been interim. Well, I guess he was interim head coach at Florida, but he was the DC there. He was the DC at UC. He's literally been the DC at every major Florida school except for South Florida, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's just crazy. I mean, these guys do it long enough. They coach everywhere, at least him in the state of Florida. He was also at Arkansas, which I forgot. I guess he went to Arkansas after he was fired from Miami as the head coach. But, yeah, he basically said, I think you asked him, maybe you asked him?
I did, yeah.
About what Norvell had told him about what kind of scheme or what he'd like to see out of the defense. He's like, just play fast. So, again, hammering that point home, I think he said something like, you got to be, if you're smart, you play physical, and if you're physical, you play fast, was the way Randy Shannon phrased it. But then he kept turning back to, they got to stop the option.
Yeah, he did, right?
Which I didn't realize that Charleston Southern ran the option.
Ruh-roh.
Do they run like the option, like Nebraska, Oklahoma wishbone option?
Yeah, I don't know. I think they run triple option, but I haven't looked at the tape yet, but I should have. I apologize.
So they are 117th in the FCS in total offense, 267.4 yards per game. So there are 122 teams? So they're 123. So they're ahead of Mississippi Valley, Texas Southern, Morehead State, Valpo. I didn't know Valpo had a football team. Northwestern State and VMI. So behind Northern Colorado, Princeton, and Bethune-Cookman. So not a great offense rolling into town. Hopefully, I mean, you got to hold them to 10, right? They might hit a play. It's football, but they don't need to be getting more than 10 points. And you got to assume if they only get 10, you should win comfortably. But who knows? But yeah, apparently Charleston Southern runs
it's triple option. I'm watching some highlights from their game against Citadel. I mean, they're under center doing some regular power handoff, inside power run, but they're also running triple option out of, the pistol and traditional sort of shotgun sets. Also just threw the ball traditionally as well. So a little bit of everything the Buccaneers bringing to the table. Their quarterback's pretty athletic. I don't get why they're not having more success.
They're 120th in the country in scoring at 14.8 points per game.
Man,
they've scored 17 touchdowns. No, I'm sorry. Wow, they've scored 21 touchdowns. They've scored 7 more touchdowns than Florida State. Now they played one more game. I get it. They've played one more game, so of course they've scored a few more touchdowns. But they I don't think Florida State has 14 touchdowns right now on the season, which again is unbelievable. Does Florida State get to 21 touchdowns this year as a team?
So we need 7 more then, if my math doesn't fail me? They'll get at least 5 against Charleston Southern.
I mean, maybe. Maybe.
I mean, they're a 33.5-point favorite. You got to do the math, right?
Yeah, I mean, sure.
It's going to shut them out?
Yeah, I mean, they could. They could. I could also see like a 30-7 game with 3 touchdowns and 3 field goals.
See, this quarterback, he must have gotten hurt, whoever this was that played against Citadel, because he looks, adept at least, I mean.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, hey, they could give you some issues. I mean, you should also be able to score on them, and also any offense is hard to run if your offensive line is getting obliterated.
This is true.
And their offensive line should be getting obliterated. Plus, didn't they outlaw, like, the Georgia Tech chop block stuff that Paul Johnson used to run?
Yeah.
I think they did, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So if you can't do that, if you have to block like man-on-man and not that nonsense, cheap diving at ankles, I feel like Florida State should be hard to block. But Florida State's linebackers aren't very good. They hit the wrong hole half the time. So an option team might feast. We'll see. All
right, so quarterback-wise, we're still going with these 2 guys. Maybe slight edge early part of the period practice to Luke Kromenhoek, just slightly, I would say. But then in period 9, when they go outside and do the cash down stuff, 3rd or 4th down, Brock Glenn came alive.
Okay.
Might have been the best sequence out of a quarterback since 13 was running things around here not too long ago. But
Danny Cannell?
Bingo.
Yeah.
Was he here last week, or is it this week with the Tallahassee Quarterback Club?
I think it was last week. I think he took a picture of himself last week. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Shout out, DK. But deep downfield completion to Darion Williamson, which everybody got excited, and Norvell ran out there and tapped him on the helmet. I'm wondering what Mike is thinking. Man, how many years have I done this?
Yeah.
Run out here and congratulate you after a nice catch in practice, only to never be able to dap you up on the sideline after scoring a touchdown in a game. But I digress. Bounced right back with another completion. Then he got loose, showed some of his wheels, but then kept his eyes downfield and threw a dart to Kentron Portier, and then finished out the drive with another completion to Keziah Holmes. That was a really good read, really good throw, and let Keziah maximize the yard after catch aspect of things. Goal line, that final play before the nutritional replenishment, still not finding a lot of success on that one. That was Luke running the show there. Then I thought towards the end of the day when they went back inside and were doing some 11-on-11, just really good throws by Kromenhoek. Keziah Holmes on a one-on-one ball, just an absolute. I think Ira tried to illustrate as best as one could in the update thread over on the Tribal Council. And then he also threw it an absolute beautiful. I think the play was designed probably just for it was a shot play to Amari Williams. That was the. You could maybe have checked down, but the entire play was to get Amari Williams open and get something big, and the throw was absolutely beautiful. So Luke did really good on there. And then Brock had a nice throw to Amari Williams later in that period too. So draw, maybe slight decision, split decision maybe to Brock. But I just thought, there were some moments, though, where we're still seeing the ball hit the ground too much in practice. Some errant throws. guys dropping balls. So not all of the things that have ailed Florida State have gone away with Alex Atkins and Ron Dugans and Adam Fuller no longer being on staff. But I did think Norvell seemed to be a little bit more pleased with how practice when he was still, upset at a couple things happening. But man, the last 3-4 weeks, like his body language, and I'm not criticizing it, I'm just making an observation. I don't have good body language when things aren't going well when I played sports. But, Mike was just the way he would react when certain things weren't going the right way in practice. It was so out of character for him, just the way he would show his feelings and his emotions when things weren't going right. It was bizarre to see him just be so animated when things weren't going right, Corey. And I thought on Tuesday, there was a couple things that he didn't like, but the way he comported himself seemed to be a lot more calm, collected, and I think they had some more big plays than usual at practice, so maybe that fed into that. So we'll see how it all shakes out. 1:30 ACC Network Extra, Corey. 1:30 p.m.
So it's not on regular TV?
Correct. It's on the internet.
Okay. All right. Well, that's where it belongs.
Yeah.
Right. So, hopefully you can tune out at like 4 o'clock because it's an easy dub. Hey, answer me this, Aslan. I wanted your take on it. We talked about it on headlines. Ira didn't want to talk about it too often. He got uncomfortable, or too much because he got uncomfortable. If they were to lose, and look, people lose to 33-point underdogs. It does happen. Yeah. Not a lot. It would be one of the 10 biggest upsets probably in ACC history, but it has happened. Harbaugh beat USC when I think he was a 40-point underdog. These things happen. Big underdogs win. If he were to lose to Charleston Southern on Saturday, do you think he would be fired?
No.
Okay.
It would just add the ultimate insult
to
injury. Just the absolute cherry on the top for how horrible this season has
right,
gone.
And that was my point. Is they were like, you'd have to think about it. I'm like, man, nothing changes. Whether you win this game or lose this game, you can't put all your eggs into the Charleston Southern basket. It's just not. That's not feasible. Like if he was going to be fired because he's had an embarrassing season, an all-time historically bad season, that would have already happened. Charleston Southern makes it more embarrassing, but okay, it's like you being filthy and then jumping into a puddle of mud. Okay, well you've got to clean yourself off eventually. Like it's not like, well, now I'm really dirty. No, you were already awful. It was it's a weird analogy. No,
it's fine.
Off the dome that was.
Yeah.
But it's like it's already disgusting. This just makes it a little bit more disgusting. But it's like one of these when you're running from the cops. And you've got all these charges.
Oh, boy. Okay,
well, resisting arrest is just another charge on top of whatever it was you were running from them in the first place.
Yeah.
It's just another charge. You're still going to jail. It's still awful. Mm-hmm. So this has already been a disaster where he's going to make wholesale changes. Losing to Charleston Southern, while embarrassing and probably legitimately would be rock bottom for this program in its history, it doesn't change the fact that that number is still that number. Yeah. And so, and I will say it the next week, because there is a good chance the next week they lose 45-6 or 60-7.
Oof.
Like, I have no idea what that game is going to be. There is a chance they get blown the F out against Florida. Same thing. Embarrassing, gross, disgusting, inexcusable. I don't think it changes the outlook of the season. I don't think it makes it, okay, well, now we really got to think about firing the coach. No. If you were going to fire the coach, he should have been fired. So it's just not feasible for the finances, and you're just trying to throw a lot of money at the problem. You're going to try to throw money at the problem. You want to win just because you want to win. You need a win over Charleston Southern just so you don't have what would be the second worst season in school history. Really, honestly, I would say probably the worst season. Considering the expectations. But even if you beat Charleston Southern, I still think you can make that argument. I don't think losing to Charleston Southern changes anything. It's not like if he wins, people are going to be like, well, Norvell's got it figured out. So if he loses, it shouldn't be like, well, he's got to go now. Like, you just can't give that much weight to Charleston Southern. It would be an awful loss, a historic loss. It's not out of the realm of possibility because this team can't score. And I've been convinced for a while that it would have trouble scoring against a local high school team's defense. This is a shade above that. They do have a decent-ish defense, and they have a horrible offense. So you might be in a game in the third or fourth quarter. Who knows? It doesn't change the fact that everything's getting blown up. He's hitting a hard reset, and you hope to be much better next year.
Do you know what the spread was in 21 against Jacksonville State?
Ooh, they had just lost to Notre Dame in overtime. I would say 30?
I don't know. I was asking if you knew.
Oh, no, I don't know. I would say
I'm kidding.
30?
It was minus 28.
Okay, yeah, I was right there. Yeah.
So, 33.5. A little bit more. Yeah.
But here's what I'd say. I would understand why if he loses that game, people would be through with him. They probably already are, though. But I think people would be like, well, this is I'm not going to support this anymore.
Yeah, the people that are defending Mike Norvell, I don't think they would stop. Maybe they wouldn't defend him in as many threads, or maybe they wouldn't make as many replies in said thread, but I still think they'd be behind him. But the people that were through with him, I think, would just be that much louder. I don't know how many people would defect from one side to the other.
But I mean, the reality is, yes, that's true. It would be louder. It would be reasonable. It would be understandable. I mean,
what's the damage? Sorry to interrupt, Corb. Like, what is there's no further damage. I mean, you're humiliated, but you're recruiting high school wise. This class of 25
correct
is going to be one of the worst prep classes you've probably ever signed in the modern era. And I don't think you would lose out on any coaching candidates. Like, wow, man, you guys also, that's how bad things are. Even I can't fix this thing. Right. And I don't think you would lose out on transfers because of it either. I mean, they would just realize that, yeah, there's opportunity here. I don't think you try to get a guy on campus that's at Iowa right now, and he's going to not answer your phone call at Florida State because, I know you guys are really bad this season, but you guys also Charleston Southern. That's a bridge too far.
Well, no, I think the argument there is if they were solely looking at the record, they wouldn't answer the phone anyway.
Exactly.
Whether you beat Charleston Southern or not, 2-10's not going to get them on the phone either.
Yeah.
They're not. So that's what I'm saying. I don't think you're losing more people out there that you want to come join the program losing to Charleston Southern. It would be an all-time horrible loss. I get it, and people would have every right to be. They're already angry, but even angrier, and have no belief in this guy. And I'm not telling you you're wrong, because if you can lose to Charleston Southern, I'm not convinced you can bring this thing back. But I'm not convinced he can bring it back even if he beats Charleston Southern. I guess that's my overarching point, is that this is still a dumpster fire. Whether they win by 5 points or 50 points on Saturday, this still remains an awful football season. And it's got to be corrected immediately. And just think about how. I mean, you'd be having to go hire a new coach 2 days before National Signing Day.
We'll see about Florida
a week before the portal.
Yeah, we'll see about Florida though. I think he could lose some support from the diehards if he were to lose that game.
100%. And again, I think he's already lost support, and with good reason.
Yeah,
with good reason. And I think the support can continue to leak and wane. Obviously, if they lose, they'd spring a leak if they lost to Charleston Southern. If they get blown out by Florida, same thing. Either way, it's a difference between 3-9, 2-10, or 1-11. Like, it's all awful. But the reality is, he can turn them all back around. There were a lot of people with good reason that were done with the dude after Jacksonville State. And then the first half of Louisville in year 2, he's losing 31-7 or whatever it was. People were done with him then. And then you saw where he was 2 years later. So the reality is he can turn it back around. They'll all jump back on board. But we've all just got to come to the realization there's no saving this season. It is an all-time awful, awful year, whether they lose or beat Charleston Southern. And he needs to beat Charleston Southern. These guys need to score touchdowns. It would be wonderful. But I don't think one loss would be like, okay, we were gonna hire those 2 coordinators for you, but now you're gone too. We got to find $100 million to pay all these guys. We got to find $100 million so we can pay you, and then also pay the whole new head coach and his coaching staff that are coming in. Again, if Saban sees that Florida State lost to Charleston Southern, it's like, I can't stand this anymore. Tallahassee and that school deserve better than this. I'm throwing my hat in the ring. Sorry, Mike, good run. Don't lose to Charleston Southern next time, idiot. But that's probably not going to happen, so you're probably going to ride with the guy.
Shout out to Seminole 2374, and I guess mainly shout out to Bill Connolly of ESPN. Seminole 2374 shared this over on the Tribal Council. So Florida State's win percentage has fallen by nearly 83 percentage points. They're currently at 10%. They're at nearly 93% last year. So in the history of top division college football, there have been 14,788 collegiate football teams. Only 3 have had their winning percentage fall by more than 82.9 percentage points.
One was Southern Miss, right?
Yep, 2012.
After is it after Fedora left?
Correct.
And then what's his name rolled in?
Ellis Johnson.
So they went. Did they go 11-1 to
12-2? 12-2. They won the Conference USA championship game, so they played in that extra game. So they went games.
They went 12-2 and then went 0-12.
Correct.
That's unbelievable. That was 2012.
It was.
Like that's not the portal era, gang.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's got to be the all-time worst coaching job anyone has ever done. Well, save for what we're watching. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
By the way, Ellis Johnson did get fired after that.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
So
he also didn't. He wasn't the one that coached him to 12-2.
Right. So the other 2 teams were the 1917 Colorado State Rams and the 1919 Colorado School of Mines football team. They went from Colorado State was 6-0-1, then they went to 0-7-1. They used to have ties, kids.
When was that?
That was back in 1917.
Okay. Well,
and then 1919, the Colorado School of Mines went from 4-0 to 0-4-2.
Okay, so back when people were just looking at up in the sky and like, what's that thing?
Yeah.
What is that? It's making a sound. Why is that bird 20,000? I mean, come on, man. That was World War I era.
Yeah.
Not even it was the Great War. They didn't even know what a World War II was yet. I don't even think they called it World War I.
No.
They didn't call it World War I until there was a Second World War, so that was just the Great War. So essentially it's happened one other time.
Yes.
Yeah, Southern Miss. That was with a brand new coach.
Well, this is what's up for grabs, Corey. If the Seminoles beat Charleston Southern, it'd be 2-10. They likely would finish 2-10, so they'd be at 20% winning percentage. They would merely have the 8th largest win percentage collapse ever.
That wouldn't be 20%, would it? 2-10? Wouldn't that be like 18%?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Apologies.
Sorry. That's just my quick math. I don't know what it is, though. It might be 17. If you're 1 out of 6, you're batting 183.
2 out of 10.
So it'd be an 18.3 winning percentage, I think.
There we go. 17%?
Oh, all right. Whatever. We're all there.
We're
We're all around it. It wouldn't be 20 though. 20 would be
correct. You're right. It's 17.
2-8.
I apologize. So it'd be the 8th largest collapse. So
how is that possible?
We would be forgotten about.
How is that possible? Who's more than that?
Well, the School of Mines, Colorado State.
Sorry, we all remember that. I mean, they got hit by the Great War. Yeah. All their best players had to go overseas.
He doesn't mention the other 4 schools that would be ahead of Florida State, but he just says that they'd be the 8th largest win percentage collapse ever, behind 4 more teams from 1950 or earlier.
Yeah, so of course.
Again,
so Southern Miss is like the most comparable, and again, Southern Miss was a whole new coach, a whole new coaching staff. And look, man, that's where this season has been so difficult to talk about and write about and kind of contextualize because we've never seen it. This is unprecedented. Nobody does this. You don't go from 13-0 to 2-10. Now, there are going to be more wild fluctuations in this era. I think we all see that. You see it with Michigan and Washington. The 2 teams that played for a national championship last year are, I think, 500, but they have like 10 losses between them. They had 1 loss between them the whole season last year. They were combined, 29-1? And then this year they're 10-10. So, or no, right? I think something like that. So we're going to see fluctuations wildly. Not like this, though.
Yeah.
This is in both of those teams have brand new head coaches. This is the same guy with the exact same coaching staff that steered this thing into a mountain. So that's where when you look at these teams that reset or take a step back, typically it comes from great change. And the only change here, and it was a big one, but you lost a lot of good players, and you did a horrible job replacing them. But the coaching staff was the exact same. So that's what makes it so, inexplicable, really. It's just inexplicable to be this bad. And I don't, you know what, man? I don't think they're this bad. Like, I know the record is the record. It was funny. We were talking on headlines about the Georgia Tech defensive coordinator. Yeah. And now he's kind of, he's been at Texas A&M. He was with Elko. He's done a really good job at Georgia Tech, I think, or at least a pretty good job. And then Ira brought up the point, well, yeah, but he allowed 21 points to this offense.
Yep.
That's not a feather in your cap. Now, one of them, Ryan Fitzgerald, had to hit a 59-yard field goal and then a 52-yard field goal. But, yeah, he allowed this team to score 2 touchdowns, so how good could he be? But, back when they were still, they still had expectations, I guess I would say this. If they played Georgia Tech last week, I think they lose by 28 points. But they don't have the roster of a team that loses by 28 points, clearly. They have the roster of a team that hung with Georgia Tech, could have maybe beaten Georgia Tech if there had been a few more possessions, blah, blah, blah. Same thing with Duke. Same thing with Memphis, Boston College. Like all these teams now that I think would beat them, like SMU beat them, that's just because the confidence is shaken, the psyche is wounded, and they're playing like they're playing out the string. But the talent on this team is probably the talent of a 6-6 team, right?
I guess.
Don't you think?
I mean, they don't have an offensive line. They don't have a quarterback. They don't have receivers.
Can we say they don't have an offensive line that performs well?
Okay.
And that's on the coaches. I am just not convinced. I'm not convinced that if there was another group in here of coaches, either evaluating, developing, teaching, whatever it has to be, or somebody that schemes up the deficiencies of the offensive line to mask them a little bit, this is not the worst offensive line in the country talent-wise. So that's what I'm saying. Like these guys are solid players. Darius Washington could go play at a number of schools in this country. So could Maurice Smith. So could Byers. A lot of teams wanted Byers. Like it's cohesively it's awful. But these players aren't awful.
Well, I mean, man, we need to take a break here in a minute, but like that's what makes everything so inexplicable. Like you said, it's not that you just whiffed on the portal. Even guys that you had for years regressed.
Yeah.
It's not just like we brought a bunch of new people, they didn't work out. The people that we had, that we brought back, that we thought were going to be big parts of our success, they've also taken steps back in their progress and their ability, and it's inexplicable.
It is.
What's not inexplicable is why Corner Pocket Bar and Grill is an awesome place to hang out.
That is explicable.
Yeah. 2475 Appalachia Parkway. The daily lunch specials. The awesome social calendar. Trivia on Tuesday nights. Hope you had fun, everybody. Thursday night, bingo night. There's also I think there's dart leagues I think that go on, Corey. I don't know correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's dart leagues that might meet up there. Throwing some darts in the leagues. Yeah.
They have them. They have them a couple of nights a week. Yeah. I think Wednesday is the main. But go up there if Bill's there. Go to talk. You'll tell if it's dart league night because it's very crowded in that section of the bar. And go ask somebody how you join because there's a lot of teams that play all over the city. I think. But Corner Pocket is one of the places that hosts, along with downstairs. I think at Seventh Hills.
Yeah, there you go. It's like on the rotation, like St. Andrews is for the Open.
Right.
Only a few select places are chosen, are dubbed worthy of being in the Tallahassee Dart League.
Yeah.
Corner
Pocket. I think Corner Pocket is the mecca.
Yeah.
That's like the St. Andrews of the Tallahassee Dart League.
There we go. Check it out for yourself. 2475 Appalachia Parkway, cptallybar.com, the website. Pete Nakos, On3 business reporter, talking coaching searches right after this. Welcome back. It is Wake Up Warchant. It is presented by Vitamin Energy, vitaminenergy.com. Check it out, everybody. Check this out. We got a big get on the show today, everybody. Pete Nakos from On3 business reporter, NIL focus, now in the coaching industry, the coaching cottage industry of this carousel moving around. Pete, thanks for joining us, man. How's life right now up in Nashville?
It's busy. A lot of phone calls, but all good. All good.
I'm jealous, man. I think in another life I might want your job, having to cover this stuff. The coaching stuff just absolutely intrigues me about how it all works. I guess let's kind of take a 30,000-foot view right now. When you talk to people or anybody in the industry, whether it's fans or coaches or agents, things of that nature, when it comes to college football this season, how many questions do you get about Florida State, what's going on right now, and about what are you hearing? What happened down there? Because I feel like that's one of the biggest things that hasn't been answered fully to anybody's liking so far down here in Tallahassee.
I hear that a lot. I think a lot of people are really curious about what's going on at Oklahoma and if Brent Venables is going to be able to fix that. But the question I keep getting about Mike Norvell on Florida State is what happened in this last year, right? They win an ACC title. They're on the cusp of a college football playoff berth. And now I mean, he has to clean staff. I mean, there's been a lot of changes. So stuff like that. I mean, questions like that. I think a lot of people also don't understand just like the amount of transfer portal turnover and how the transfer portal can be so hit and miss. So a lot of questions like that.
All right, so you dropped a lot of names before we even got our first hot boards up on warchant.com, and there was some overlap, a significant amount of overlap, I would say, on the at least on the offensive side of things. You know, the caliber of guys that Florida State seems to have interest in. I don't know so much if it's Florida State has interest in them or if those guys have interest in Florida State, but when you see names like, you know, Ben Arbuckle, who's been at Washington State, then their OC here, Joe Craddock, Buster Faulkner, in terms of the pool of candidates that's out there for Florida State. I mean, how much mutual interest do you think there is, and where do you think, you know, Mike Norvell started to get to this point where these are some of the names on his list?
Yeah, you know, I think that he's starting to like really just dive into it. Wrote in an Intel piece yesterday that I think he spent most of the bye week recruiting. The names that I kind of have circled right now are Joe Craddock at Tulane. Obviously, he's really helped develop the quarterback Darren Mensah, who's had a really phenomenal freshman season. I'd say beyond that too, like Ben Arbuckle has done some really interesting stuff at Washington State. What he's done with John Watier, who might turn out to be one of the better portal quarterbacks available. I think we have to see how that plays out. So those are two really big names right now. You know, Buster Faulkner is getting a ton of traction across the country, right? He's a name to watch at Southern Miss. There's a lot of love for him at Wisconsin and Oklahoma. So I don't know where Buster Faulkner ends. As someone who has kind of told me, like, he's going to have a menu of options he's going to have to go over in these next 3 weeks. So those are kind of names I have circled at Florida State. The other ones too, right? Brennan Marion, the UNLV offense coordinator. I think the attraction there is that he brings in a brand new offense, but he's also a pretty well-known recruiter at what he did at Texas. And then, I mean, everyone wants to talk about Dan Mullen. I'm well aware I floated his name. I think the thing you need to remember with Dan Mullen is I think he really wants back in the game. So there's no, right, I can't tell you right now that he's going to get a job. I'm just saying that behind the scenes, he has put in a lot of work to try to get back into the game.
Yeah, I would think he might be holding on for a head coaching job, but maybe this is sort of the bridge to get back to that spot. Looking at these names, again, you know, Pete, does it give you any insight? Is there any kind of thought around the country about what that role ultimately would be for an offensive coordinator in terms of it will be their offense to run? They'll have kind of full autonomy, or is there still some sort of dissonance out there about whether or not Mike Norvell will truly give up his offense if he has to make a hire of this kind of caliber?
Honestly, no one knows that answer yet. And that's one of the biggest problems. I keep talking to people every day about this Florida State OC job, and people are like, is Mike calling plays, or is the person that they bring in calling plays? And I haven't been able to get a definitive answer on that just yet. I think either way, though, when you look at this offensive staff, he is going to need to bring in some firepower. And even if he does call plays, he needs people in there Sunday through Thursday who have completely game plan for him so he can just come in and call plays. And, you know, the other thing, too, is recruiting. I mean, for this thing to turn around beyond having success in the transfer portal in the next 6 weeks, it's going to need to be bringing in guys who have the recruiting chops to make sure Florida State's back at the top of the ACC in the country when it comes to high school recruiting.
Yeah. Also, wouldn't hurt if they brought some guys with them from their current institution, probably. We'll see just kind of how kosher that is. Looking on the defensive side of the ball, you know, Scott Simons was a name that I figured we would see on a hot board pretty quickly, and he was on both yours and the one that Gene Williams and Ira Schofel were able to source out for warchant.com. The familiarity there with him being at Memphis, obviously a nice thing. When I saw Zach Arnett's name on your list, Pete, I was like, woo! I gave a little bit of slightly Ric Flair woo. How real could that of a fit could that possibly be with Arnett? Is Simons maybe an odds-on favorite? How do you kind of size a defensive coordinator? Is there a pecking order in terms of who seems to be the most logical maybe candidate or the best fit for what Mike wants?
I have yet to hear like one name like picking up traction like I have heard Joe Craddock. But if I had to like go through some rankings for you, I really like where Scott Simons sits right now, right? Mostly because of the relationship that Mike has with him from Memphis. Beyond that, too, I think that Zach Arnett's intriguing. I really like the idea of Brad White. Things might not be exactly going in the right direction at Kentucky. Who knows how much longer Mark Stoops is there? This could be the perfect situation for Brad White to kind of hit the reset button. And if Florida State fans know or don't know, he has a great track record of what he's done building defenses for the Wildcats. So that's an intriguing name to me. By no means is he's the leader, but I think that's a name that should really get looked at. What do you like about Zach Arnett? I got to ask you that.
I mean, I just feel like, I want somebody who has Power 5 experience that has had to, call plays, and it's been their kind of their total identity on defense. They necessarily haven't been somebody that's worked under Kirby and kind of has maybe some Kirby's, magic dust on them. Although, listen, Dan Lanning, worked under Kirby and look how awesome he's been. So every man's his own man. But I just feel like Arnett, he was not brought to Starkville to be the head football coach. Obviously, the unfortunate, tragedy of losing Mike Leach prompted him to become the head coach, and then that didn't work out for him. But I feel like when you have to be the defensive coordinator for an air raid offense that's not maybe on the field all that much, you probably have a good sense of what you need to do to slow teams down. So just feel like Arnett being around Lane Kiffin, that program the last year at Ole Miss, I don't know, it just feels like that would be something that has a fair amount of, I'm all about mitigating risk right now. Right. I just don't think Florida State can take a chance on an up-and-comer.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I think the one thing Zach Arnett does, too, is like he has a proven track record as a defensive coordinator. We all know that 1 year at Mississippi State didn't go well, but there's a lot going on there in Starkville when he did that. The other thing that you talk about Ole Miss, I love the idea of bringing someone in who just worked with Pete Golding, because that front seven right now at Ole Miss is maybe top 5, top 3 in the country.
Don't get me started, Pete. I'm a big Lane Kiffin truther down here.
Okay.
I wanted him in 18 when they tried to get Taggart, and I kind of wanted them to get him in 2020, but I digress. Focusing one other thing on defense here, Pete. We saw in your reporting in your intel piece that you had over on On3, which, by the way, when you subscribe to warchant.com, you also are part of the On3 network. You get to read all the premium stuff that Pete's releasing for us over on the network. It's incredible stuff. And you mentioned the Southern Miss job. We mentioned Buster Faulkner might be in the running there, the current Georgia Tech offensive coordinator. But Patrick Surtain, USM legend, sounds like he went ahead and actually had interviewed for that position. How real of a candidate do you think he is for that candidacy, that vacancy over there in Hattiesburg right now?
He's had conversations with them. I would still tell you, though, that Buster Faulkner is kind of that top candidate at the moment. And that's nothing against his body of work. And obviously he's an alum and has had he had a good career there. He's had success now at Florida State. But I think they really like the idea of bringing someone in who has an offensive play calling experience. So I would not, if I had to put like an odds on it, I do not expect him to be the next head coach of Southern Miss.
All right. A lot of folks are also going to wonder now if he is interviewing for that job, does that mean he's got one foot out the door here at Florida State? Because there's a lot of people that do like Surtain. He might be the one coach that's kind of kept a high approval rating despite all the turmoil down here in Tallahassee. But we'll see how that obviously shakes out.
I will say one thing though: if Buster Faulkner turns it down, I think all bets are off.
All right, we'll see how that goes. You also cover the world of NIL. Clearly, in the transfer portal factors into this greatly, Pete. How crazy do you think the market will be? I think last year, Shannon Terry, CEO of On3, kind of had a sage tweet that came out about a lot of fan bases that might have been expecting that kind of program changing level of talent to be in the spring window was not going to be there because all the big names had gotten signed early on in this winter window, if you will.
Right.
What's your sense of what the market's going to be either for talent or how much is the top level talent going to command this time around? Is it going to be about on par of what it was last year, or do you guys expect a decent spike, I guess, in the valuations of these players?
It's really tough to tell because revenue sharing starting in like 6 months. So a lot of these contracts are like signable. Some are monthly that are just kind of roll over until revenue sharing starts. So I can't tell you if the amount of quarterbacks going to be paid is really going to jump. I know the base for an elite quarterback will be about $750 to $1 million. In terms of the talent pool, it's really tough to tell right now. There's so much parity, and we all kind of knew the minute Dylan Gabriel and Cam Ward went in the portal, for example, right, they were going to be like the top names. I don't have such an elite level of names that I'm watching right now. But that can obviously change. We're about 3 weeks out. So it's going to be really interesting. And for the Florida State angle of it too, these coordinators need to be hired before the portal opens on December 9th, the day after Selection Sunday, because players aren't going to want to go to Tallahassee if they don't know what the offense or defense is going to look like and who's calling the plays and what that all is going to look like.
Yeah, it feels like to a certain extent Norvell's kind of punting on the high school recruiting class because that's going to start the Wednesday after the Florida game. And I mean, if he makes a hire on Monday after that, I know they have until Friday to sign, but the likelihood of you getting somebody in place to appeal or win over a high school recruit is really slim. But yeah, I mean, December 9th, that seems like, I don't know, that seems like a month long more of time to get things working than it does for high school guys. So we'll keep our fingers crossed on that. Does anything surprise you anymore, Pete, when you hear about figures or players moving around now? I mean, when you talk about the floor for a good quarterback is going to be $750,000, like, to me, that sounds like, I don't want to say incredulous, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Are you just absolutely stopped being surprised when you hear dollar figures or just the way teams and programs go about acquiring talent now?
The 750 to $1 million don't really stun me anymore. That kind of is like at par for the course. The numbers that do surprise me is when we get into this Bryce Underwood recruitment that has become like very nationally followed. And it looks like he's still going to go to LSU, but the number keeps getting higher from everything. Sources tell On3 and the Wolverine and the Bengal Tiger, other fan sites at On3. So those numbers really do surprise me, but the 1.5, the 2 million for top quarterbacks, that isn't really stunning me at this point.
Hey, just one last thing I wanted to circle back on before we let you go here, and we appreciate you taking the time out, Pete.
Of course.
The Joe Craddock thing, what are some of the tea leaves that you are reading that makes you feel that, at least right now, he seems to be one of the more prime candidates for the OC job right now for Florida State?
He's experienced. He can come in and have the track record of developing quarterbacks, which I think is going to be important. But, by no means do I think it's like I can't say it's like the expectation is he'll be the OC or anything like that, but just reading some tea leaves, I can't say he's picking up traction. I'd really keep an eye on Brennan Marion too. I think his track record really jumps out. I think the fact he might bring in a new offense could be an attractive to Mike Norvell. So I think we'll have to wait and see a little bit, but the sooner they can make the hires, the sooner they can put this 1-9 season in the past.
Yeah. What's the buyout again, Pete? You're our Treasury Secretary when it comes to, I think 63, you said?
I think 63 million. Yeah.
Unbelievable. All right. Let's get through these next 2 games and then see how these hires work out. Hopefully we'll catch up with you sometime between now and then and maybe have some more clear on who it's going to be. We appreciate the time. Pete Nakos, business reporter for the On3 Network. Pete, thanks so much, man.
Thank you so much, man. Have a great day.
It's Wake Up Warchant. It's presented by Vitamin Energy, vitaminenergy.com, promo code warchantbogo. All right, Corey, so what do you think about that? Nakos, when he's talking to people, it's like, so what's going on at Florida State? Like, he's hearing that from everybody. And the fact that he still doesn't know, and the people out there in these sort of circles, whether it's agents, and I probably should have pressed him a little bit more, but like, so Pete, like, how do you know all this stuff? You're a young guy. You've been in the game only for a few years, and you're really well dialed in right now. But even the people that are involved in these coaching searches that talk about and exchange information, Corey, they're not even aware whether or not Mike is going to hand over the keys to the offense totally and truly. Does that sound about right to you because you don't want to limit your possibilities, or is that a little bit of a dubious sort of morsel of information that came out of the interview with Pete?
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like hearing that because I just don't know what kind of help are you going to get. What kind of infusion of coaching talent and acumen are you going to get at that position to not be able to run the offense? You don't need more yes men on that side of the ball. You don't need somebody that owes his career to you. You need somebody that will push back when you're about to make a dumb decision. You need somebody that will push back and say, this guy can't play for us, man. I know you like him, or he's about the right stuff. He can't play. And we can't keep running that play, Mike, because those dudes refuse to block out there. So you can keep calling your wide receiver screens all you want. These dudes won't block. And that receiver coach that you got won't teach him to block. You know what I mean? Like he needs the devil on his shoulder. And I think when you're, I don't think Atkins was a yes man. Like he had a role and was a good offensive line coach there for a while. But he certainly, Norvell was going to make a decision. Norvell was the final say in all offensive matters. And you see where that got you. So I feel like, so you're going to bring in somebody else that you're just going to give him a title of OC, but he doesn't get to really run it. Number one, that limits the field you're picking from immensely, because the real ones aren't going to be okay with that. The guys that would say yes to that are guys that just want Florida State on their resume, or they want an OC on their resume. Even when that next job comes calling and they dig around, they'll be like, well, you didn't really do much. Why would I? You know what I mean? Like that's not – if you want guys that are on the fast track to being lucrative, high-paid, well-thought-of coaches, you want guys that wouldn't accept that job. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
sure.
that's – I know I keep asking you that, but I'm wondering how I'm phrasing it. But so that would really concern me, because I just don't think you're getting the best you can get. And this isn't – when you just fired a DC that was having a bad year and put up a bad defense, but his defense was worlds better than your offense, and you're just going to keep the offense the guy calling the shots on offense gets to stay the exact same. You just bring some other pieces. No, that would really concern me. Not saying he couldn't do it. Yeah, they went 13-0 last year, granted, but I would be highly concerned and a wee bit agitated if he didn't bring in someone that actually gets to run their offense.
On the Dan Mullen front, a lot of people like that hire. I'd love it too. I just don't know how viable of a candidate he truly is. On Tuesday, Brent Venables was asked about whether or not that's a hire he would go after, and Venables said he didn't want to discuss specifics, but he did say he reached out to Dan Mullen last year.
Okay.
And then Pete obviously said that, Dan's a guy that he's heard is like really chomping at the bit to get back in the game. So maybe he'll be less picky. Not saying that he's going to lower his standards and take a job like Florida State's beneath him. I just think he's a guy. He just strikes me as a guy that thinks he probably can get a head coaching job and is going to kind of maybe hold out for it, but maybe being out the game for 2 years is enough. And I don't know. I think I'd rather take Florida State than Oklahoma. I think I'd rather work hand in hand with Mike than just be given just Brent Venables, like, just do it, man. Fix it. Because I still think Venables is a little bit of a wild card of a guy.
But if you're looking at it from Mullen's point of view, and again, I know this isn't how most coaches think. They're a lot more competitive and self-confident than this, but you go to Oklahoma, who struggled almost as much as Florida State. Nobody has, but Oklahoma's offense has been dreadful too. Well, I feel like it's probably going to be a little bit harder to reach great success in year one and year two in the SEC. Like, that's great, man. You have to play Texas, Florida, Alabama every year. Like, it's going to be tough. But in the ACC, if you get the right players and you get the right coach, you can turn it around pretty quickly. You're not facing the baddest defensive lines in the country on a week-to-week basis. Again, ACC has some nice players. I'm not disputing that. But the SEC is loaded. And I just feel like if you're trying to get your name up and show that you can turn around an offense quickly and thereby become a head coaching candidate at a Power 5, Power 4 school, Power 2 school, I feel like the better avenue for that is at Florida State, because I think it's easier to prove to have a drastic turnaround. But I'm not sure if I'd be all on board with Dan Mullen. I don't know how those dynamics would work in a look, if he brings an offense that averages 35 a game, I don't care how weird he is.
No,
do it.
He's a really good ball coach. He's a weird dude, but he's a really good ball coach. Obviously, he had good things to say about Brennan Marion. That's someone to keep an eye on. But it's, Buster Faulkner is a guy that seems that there's been a lot of traction for him around a lot of jobs, apparently. Although I do wonder if he'll kind of want to be his own man, like a head coach in Southern Miss. Sounds like he might be their top priority. But Joe Craddock from Tulane was a name that Pete seemed to. Yeah. Again, I don't know if that's because whoever represents Joe or the contacts in the business that Pete knows, maybe they're more pro Joe Craddock than anybody, but that was a name that he said because of the development that he's done there in year one at Tulane. because Darian Mensah, he's a redshirt freshman quarterback, so he didn't play at all last year. Now he's been thrust into starting for the Green Wave, and he's got 18 touchdowns, 4 picks, completing about 66% of his passes, almost 2,200 yards in the air. Not much of a runner, though.
It's weird. He's not slow. I watched some of the Navy highlights, and he had like 60 yards rushing in that game. And I'm like, yeah, he moves pretty well. He moves like Brock Glenn-ish. He's probably not as athletic as Brock Glenn, but he's not. He wouldn't get dusted in a foot race. And, he's run for like 100. Before that game, he was averaging like 15 yards a game rushing. Not really a dual threat, but has had a very nice redshirt freshman year. And again, if I'm going to start parsing down the candidates myself personally, I know you didn't ask this.
Please.
He wasn't great at Troy. I'm talking about Craddock, who's at Tulane now. Yeah. He has done a real nice job with this quarterback, but this quarterback might be really good, like super good. And if that's the case, he's on my list. If I get a guarantee, he's bringing the quarterback with him. If I don't, I just think you can do better. The guys at Tulane, before that he's at Troy, that's not the resume of the people that I've been talking about. Yeah. This guy's not been around a lot of big-time talent. I'm saying that knowing that Tulane would beat this Florida State team by 3 touchdowns. I know that. Granted, I get it. I'm sure we have a huge Tulane listenership. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that he hasn't been around the kind of guys. He hasn't recruited at the level because he's been in the Sun Belt, man, and he's in the AAC. You got to get away from that. More than that, it's not just you have to get away from that because there are great coaches in those conferences. But his 2 years at Troy were nothing special at all. They didn't even average 30 points a game at Troy, either one of those years. So it's like, all right, man, he's done a nice job at Tulane, which is a winning program and has some good players.
Won a lot of games at Troy, though. They won a lot of games.
Yeah, but I don't know that it was because of his offense, his high-flying offense. Yeah. I think I don't know, is Tulane fast? Do they run fast? I don't know how many plays they run. I just think that nothing about that wows me. But I know he's a qualified candidate. I know he was like the youngest OC in the country at one point, I think, when he was at SMU. So he's been around. He's coached a lot. He's just, listen to these names, man. SMU, Troy, Tulane. Like, I don't know. It's just Florida State.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm with you. That's pretty much what we have on the offensive side of things. Defensively, Scott, I guess it's
no
Simmons.
Longo. Did you ask him about my man Longo?
I didn't, and I didn't ask him about your guy Robert Livingston from Colorado on the defensive side as well.
All right.
So I apologize. I did reach out to ESPN to try to get Pete Thamel. So if I get Pete Thamel, I'll ask him about those.
Oh, don't tell him that I'm the co-host.
No, I'm going to say, I want to bury the hatchet. I want him to unblock
no
you.
chance.
I want to do it live.
He blocked me 10 years ago.
I know. I want to watch it live. Lots happened in 10 years. I'm going to log into your X account, formerly known as Twitter. So Scott, I guess it's Simmons. I thought it was Simons because it's got that Y there instead of the I for Simmons. But he said that's obviously a name that makes sense because of the familiarity that he has having coached under Mike when they were in Memphis for a year. He likes my Zach Arnett.
Where is he now?
He said SMU. He's at SMU.
Right.
Yeah. So he was at Liberty. He left Memphis to go to Liberty to be the defensive. He was linebackers coach at Memphis, goes to Liberty to be DC, and then takes a job at SMU. So that's one of the names. He likes the Zach Arnett sort of. I mean, he's the one that put on the board. I'm like, that's the one I would like. And he was like, well, why would you like it? I'm like, well, he's proven, man. Like he did it at Washington State. He did it at Mississippi State, and like he had to be a coach there under really weird circumstances because Mike Leach passed away. In the not the preseason, but like in the middle of the summer. So he wasn't supposed to be a head coach. But to your point too, I guess, and Pete pointed this out as well. Him being at Ole Miss this year, being around that team right now, that level of success, that defense, and what Pete Golding and the Grove Collective was able to put together in terms of some really nasty dudes on the front 4 and the front 7 they have, like that's, you want guys that are familiar with, like, okay, that's what you need to win at the highest level. So I would like that as well. But I'm not people. You listen to Pete. He didn't give us an order of list or anything like that. There's no pecking order. But he also did kind of circle a little bit Brad White from Kentucky, Corey. So, again, a guy that's worked under Mark Stoops, but, Kentucky's had a rough season this year, but they've played probably above their weight class since Mark Stoops has been there, and I think Brad White's been there for all of it, if not
Yeah, man.
7
and
years.
And I know we view it as Stoops' defense, just like we view it as Kirby's defense, we view it as Saban's defense, and all that. But again, there is some osmosis that goes on when you're around those kind of people and those kind of defenses. And Kentucky has been better than it probably should have been since Mark Stoops has been there, and it's almost all because of the defensive side of the ball. Like, they get dudes on that side of the ball. They play incredibly hard. They slow down. They beat Ole Miss this year. Like, they slow down really good offenses a lot of the time. Again, you would have confidence that he knows what it's supposed to look like and who these players are supposed to look like because he's been around it. And I just want some experience like that on this coaching staff. Guys that know exactly what it's supposed to look like, up close and personal. The competitive spirit in a kid, the way they practice, the way they should be practicing. If this kid doesn't play hard in a game, he's not going back in. All that kind of stuff that I think is just learned at bigger boy football. I don't know. I could be completely wrong there. Again, Florida State's head coach was at Memphis, and he went 13-0 in year 4 and went 10-3 in year 3. So there's not one way to skin a cat. There's 9 of them, I think. No, they have 9 lives. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat.
Catfish, not an actual kitten. Feline.
Oh yeah, that's right. We looked that up. You're right. So I still don't buy that. I think back in the day, people were skinning cats. Speaking of, when Stephanie officially moves in, I get to be
cat dad.
A cat dad. Yeah, I can't wait.
How many she got? You got 3 now, or just
she's
2?
Got 2.
Okay.
Her son's got 1, but she's got the 2 that she's had for 6 or 7 years that are her babies and she loves.
Yeah,
and,
right.
Look, man, I sometimes accidentally leave the door open. And I'm on record as saying that now. It is an accident if it happens, but sometimes the door gets left open. But yeah, I'm sure I'll grow to love them.
Yeah, as long as they're microchipped, that's all that matters.
Are they? Is that a thing? Oh, well, then we can find them on the phone, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's perfect. I don't think she has that because there's been many a night. Finn, like for hours out in the neighborhood. Finn. So
I don't think it's like an Apple AirTag where.
Well, you need that, don't you?
Yeah.
That's what these cats need. Then you could just leave the door open. Who cares? Yeah. They could be outdoor cats.
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Do people have outdoor cats?
There's a feral cat that is like a neighborhood cat that I leave food out for every now and then, but I haven't seen her in a few days. I'm a little bit worried about her.
Okay.
I
should have an outdoor son.
Yeah,
I think that I just want guys on the coaching staff that have been around it, man. This is not the time to take a chance on some guy that's been at Division II for 2 years and then had a nice run in an AAC school for a year. Like, give me somebody that's been around it, that knows what it's like to try to game plan for Joe Burrow, or had real success against Alabama, something like that, man, or slowed down Ohio State. Like, just guys that have been around elite football and elite football players. Not at every position, but I feel like DC would be the one I would really want, a guy that's been around elite defensive minds.
Yeah, Brad White, by the way, everybody, the defensive coordinator at Kentucky, been there 8 years, I think, was in the reporting from Pete. But before he came to Kentucky in 2018, Corey, he had spent 5 years working with the Colts, first in a defensive quality control capacity. Then he was the assistant linebacker coach for 1 year, and then the outside linebackers coach for 3 years.
Yeah, sign me up for that.
So a little bit
sign
of that,
me up for that.
A little bit of Mark Stoops.
Yep.
Playing in the SEC. So I think that's a little bit more impressive maybe than Joe Craddock.
You wonder
on the
why
offensive
he'd come.
side.
Why he'd come?
Yeah,
gets to run his own defense. Gets to be the head coach of the defense.
Yeah, Tyler Santucci. I mean, a little bit of a different situation probably, but there's going to be a certain point where Tyler Santucci had to leave the nest, and kind of be looked upon as like you're
right.
calling the guy, it's your defense. I don't want to say much the way that Kirby left Nick, because that was the head coaching job at one of the best jobs in all of America, and he's done a pretty good job there.
He's done all right since he got there, I think.
I was going to ask you about my guy Lane. What do you think about that? Like, if we were in the SEC right now, Corey, and we were 9-2, I guess would we be rooting to make it to the SEC championship game? Do we really want to win it? Do we want to go in there and risk our guys getting hurt?
No, of course not. No, not. I mean, the goal is to make the playoff, right?
Yeah.
And if you're Yeah, no,
But you get the bye, though. You get the bye.
Yeah, but I think it'd be cool to host a home playoff game.
It would.
And also, if you're 9-2, 10-2, and then you go to the SEC championship game and lose by 4 touchdowns, there's no guarantee you're in. Now, look, I can promise you this, folks. Next year at this time, they are going to push with all their might. Anybody that advances to the championship game of the SEC and the Big Ten automatically get berths. They're automatically in. I can promise you that's coming next. That is where this is going. They will not stop until it's 6 SEC schools, 5 Big Ten schools, and UCF or something, or Tulane. That's all. So Tulane can go get murdered by Georgia, who's a 5 seed. Great. Like, that's what they want, and that's where it's going. So this will be – but for right now, until that's changed, which I'm sure it will be changed very quickly after the season's over, once they see how this all shakes out, because there will be a team that probably loses one of these Big Ten championship games, maybe, or SEC. It doesn't get in because of it, which is like, is that fair? Maybe not, man. Like, so Georgia, let's say for argument's sake, Ole Miss gets to the championship game and plays who? Alabama? They're 10-2. Georgia's 10-2 and doesn't have to go play the SEC championship game. Ole Miss plays in Alabama at 10-2 and they lose, and they're 10-3, and now they're bumped out. Meanwhile, Georgia, so they get penalized for advancing to the SEC championship game. And meanwhile, Georgia could have very well gone to the SEC championship game and lost as well, and they would have been bumped out. Instead, they had a happy Thanksgiving knowing they were in. Like, there was no, you know what I mean? So it's like, is it even a reward to go play in that? Unless you're undefeated, is there a reward to go play in that thing? If you have 2 losses, the risk isn't even close to the reward. If your end game is to try to get to the playoff and win a national championship, who cares if you win the conference championship? So it's going to be interesting how they address this moving forward, because that is, and also, let's say Oregon gets to the Big Ten champion. They've already qualified, by the way. They figured out somehow. They looked through all the tiebreakers. It took them 2 days, but they figured out that Oregon's win the other night over my man Phil Longo got them to the Big Ten championship game. Well, if Oregon's undefeated and they're in the Big Ten championship game, and Ohio State rolls in at 11-1, what? Other than wanting to win the conference championship, and I know get that bye, why would you? If you got guys that are banged up and are at 65 or 70%, you might sit them. You know, that is something to, because you're in no matter what. The
first games are December 20th, by the way, and people are wondering.
So it's like a 2 weeks off, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's not that far. It's not a 4-week gap. So you might have Dylan Gabriel has a sprained ankle. Can't move real well. Like Lagway. Like he has a hamstring injury, and you're like, you know what? We're not going to risk it. You're not going to play. We'd rather have you for December 20th at full speed than December 7th at half speed, because that's the game that matters so much more. So all of this there's going to be some unintended consequences from all this, and it would be great if they just got rid of the conference championship games, but they will not do that because it's too much money. I've talked too much.
No.
This is supposed to be
it was a lean show.
A lean show.
But I actually have like 2 other things I want to ask you.
Oh, boy.
No, it's fine. We'll wait for another day.
Okay.
Although I tell myself that every time, then I never end up asking the questions. But yeah, it's been a long one.
You can ask me one, and I'll give you a 8-word answer.
No, because it's just.
Well, it's provoking. All right.
No, I was going to ask you about. We can talk about during the live show. You can think about it. We'll lead that off with the live show. I'll let you get some time to think about it before we start taking questions later tonight when we do things. But just the way that Papuch has talked about, I'm 100% transparent with recruits, and I tell them that, like, I don't know what's all going to happen here. I'll be honest. I don't know what's going to happen. But I do know that we've done this before, and we have every plan of doing it again. And I just feel like it's a little bit different this time around when you're like, yeah, we brought all those guys in, and we kind of, it didn't work out, but it's fine. It's fine. A little bit different than when you inherit what they inherited and had to do it with the pandemic.
Yeah, this is year 5, not year 1.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different. But, hey, man, if that's what they can sell and the players will buy it, then that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
Shout out to Bruno Angelo Roos, apparently a kicker-punter hybrid who committed to the Noles yesterday. So
okay, there you go. Welcome aboard, man. Hey, this is where kickers come to shine.
Yeah.
Kickers and punters. This is a program built for punters.
All right, we're going to do a live show, 6 o'clock tonight. Join us for that. If you don't feel like waiting that long to get your Florida State fix, I don't blame you. You just listen to an hour-long podcast, so you really like this program. Man, I recommend the Jeff Cameron Show, 1 to 4 o'clock, 93.3 FM, as well as our War Chant TV page on YouTube. And we'll be back at practice on Wednesday morning. We'll get Mike Norvell afterwards, see how he feels about the Noles' chance against the Buccaneers. We'll also have practice footage, maybe some tweets, things of that nature. Check it all out, warchant.com. He's Corey, I'm Aslan. Thanks for listening to Wake Up War Chant, presented by Vitamin Energy, vitaminenergy.com. Use that promo code, warchantbogo.